Hello everyone, this is Nele speaking for the Girl with the Curly Hair project, and today I want to talk to you about why people find it so hard to believe you have autism or why they don't allow you to be autistic. And I'm pretty sure an awful lot of you have encountered this, whether it be as a parent or loved one or someone with autism themselves, that people bluntly tell you that they feel you don't have autism and that you should, simply try harder. Now, why is this? When you look at the media and what people believe to be autism is a very narrow definition of things. Now, we know autism is very broad and highly individual. My type of autism is very different from Alice's type of autism, for example. I'm an extrovert type, she's more introvert. She has different special interests than I do and reacts differently to sensory input. So we're all very different, but people who do not come in contact on a daily basis or weekly basis with someone who has autism do not know this, nor understand this. What they see is someone with autism that stims an awful lot, is most likely nonverbal, has absolutely no social skills, and is unable to live by themselves or care for themselves. Now, this may be true for some, but it's also very untrue for others. And that makes it quite difficult for people to understand what autism is, because it's such a broad spectrum of things. I want to illustrate this with a couple of examples, if I may. I'm very verbal. Some people on the spectrum just happen to be very verbal. We have learned to instigate conversation, which we may or may not have rehearsed in our heads. With me, it's an awful lot of rehearsal in my head, and spontaneous conversation is still very difficult for me. But I am verbal. When people meet me and they talk to me, they see someone who's confident, very verbal, in an educated manner. So they automatically assume that I'm not autistic. They automatically assume that because I'm able to speak, I have no other issues and I'm neurotypical. This places onto me an awful lot of expectations, both on the sensory side, the social side, and other things that I simply cannot live up to. Another, for example, is that I can talk to family for an hour or two. That's long already. I'll be exhausted after that. But I cannot keep in touch because I simply lack those social skills. I cannot instigate the social chit-chat because I simply lack those social skills. And I'll be very exhausted because I do not have the sensory processing fashion that other people have. And I get judged on that very quickly and very harshly even. And a lot of people with autism will suffer the same consequence. When you're a parent with autism and your child is quite hyperactive, it might be that your child has ADHD as well as a comorbid condition, and can actually talk to other children. A lot of people will tell you that your child's not autistic because they're able to instigate conversation with other children. What they don't see is the meltdowns. What they don't see is the shutdowns. What they don't see is crying out of frustration, is the misunderstandings about social conversation, the fights because your child said something that is socially considered inappropriate. They only see one thing and they judge you for it. It's the first impression curse, as I call it. First impression is the impression that will last. And when you're able to blend in, even for a short amount of time, people will always remember that first impression and will always come back to you telling you that, but you were able to do that then. You're not autistic. And that's very hard because all the time you feel like you have to prove you have autism. You have to prove to other people you're autistic, while in fact, this shouldn't be. You should be accepted for who you are And people should accept the fact that, you like to be alone and you're different. And you sometimes just lack social skills and social chit-chat just isn't up your alley. And you like to talk about your special interest. And you hate sensory input, or some of it. But this is not the case. And this might be a very difficult struggle for a lot of people because they have to prove themselves over and over and over again that indeed they are autistic. I want to illustrate this with another example. And I want to illustrate this with a work environment. As an adult on the spectrum, work can be very difficult, especially when there's change involved. For instance, before I graduated as a special needs therapist, I worked as a shop manager. I dealt with people all day, yes. I know for a lot of people that's like, oh my God, how were you able to cope? It's very simple. It was a very familiar environment with very little change, with a lot of rehearsed conversation in my head. When I went to internship as a special needs therapist, I had an awful lot of issues because I had no rehearsed conversation in my head. The environment was not familiar at all. There was no structure and routine for me, so I was unable to cope. When people see me in my environment as a shop manager, they will not see I have autism because I do well. I have a very well-rehearsed environment with a lot of structure and routine that I'm very familiar with. But put me in another work environment that I'm not familiar with, and I can't cope. I stress out. I shut down. I become very non-verbal, and then people will see that I'm autistic. However, when they've seen me in the first environment, they're quickly to judge, you're not autistic, when in fact, I still am. Even though I may be in a familiar environment, the rehearsed conversation in my head still takes up a lot of effort and exhausts me. The sensory input in my head still takes up a lot of effort and exhausts me. The daily contact with other people still takes up a lot of space in my head and exhausts me. And even though I may be verbal and I may look spontaneous, I'm not spontaneous at all because everything is rehearsed. And that takes an awful lot of time and effort to do so. And not everyone with autism is able to do that, of course. I just happen to be able to do that. But this goes to show how quickly people are to judge you on your first impression. And it makes me wonder, if you meet someone, should you show your autistic side instead of trying to fit in? And that's a choice we all have to make personally. I think a lot of people on the spectrum want to fit in, want to have a sense of belonging somewhere and not be different. But keep in mind that when you have a first impression and you're able to camouflage or shapeshift, pointing to previous videos, people will remember that and people will automatically assume you're normal and will automatically assume when you're unable to do something that you're making up excuses, when in fact we all know that's not the truth, And that makes it very difficult. And this is why people, excuse me, very often don't believe I have autism or simply don't allow me to be autistic. Because the first impression they got of me was someone who can seemingly function neurotypically, when the second impression is actually something else and more autistic. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, I will gladly point you out to our blog or our Facebook page where you can leave your questions and we will try to get back to you. I hope you all have a nice day. Bye.